This is a sample chapter from Fitton Books. Chapter 28. Patch and Natalie, both tired from days on the road, sat atop well-groomed dark horses in the warm, dusty afternoon sun. She wore a lightweight LA Dodgers jersey and jeans. Patch's olive green t-shirt and pants came from army fatigues. They ambled along the pipe-framed fence under the eucalyptus tree's foliage about 2 miles from the ranch house. Patch, did you see Bobby's hands? Raw and bleeding from shaking the hands of so many people. Those crowds were wild. I knew he'd get a positive reception on the campaign trail, said Patch, but this is a movement, Natalie. And it's not about President Kennedy, said Natalie. They reached the side trail which led to the hills. Patch brought the horse up a well-trodden trail. Natalie caught up with him and moved by his side. Right, things are different. The world has changed in just 5 years. President Kennedy was more reasoned. Bobby is full of passion. True. When we get back, said Natalie, I'm going to lay by the pool. Patch raised his brows several times and smiled. I could use a good swim. She returned the smile. I thought so. Once we pick it up again in Indiana, we're going full tilt with the campaign. No Baker Finch, no CIA. So far, he answered. It all depends on whether Bobby starts winning. They continued along the dirt and scrub brush to the top of the hill. The jagged, snow-covered Mount San Jacinto rose like rock candy from the desert floor. Remember how you flew in from the Super Bowl, Patch? I do. You didn't like me then. No, I had other things on my mind. Then you did like me back then, she said as they started down the other side. I thought you were attractive, but that's back then. But that's it, back then. Out of the corner of his eye, something moved on the trail. He recognized the kid he had seen on this very trail over a year ago. Rocco! The kid rode his horse closer. His flaccid face seemed distant as he squinted. Why you call me Rocco? He asked in an angry tone. We met here on the trail last year. Hey, I don't know you, said Rocco. Then he turned and retreated down the trail. What's the matter with him? Asked Natalie. That kid was happy-go-lucky a year ago, said Patch. Maybe he's just having a bad day. No, that's not it. His eyes were glassy, Natalie. He didn't remember me. Very strange. He held her hand back to Mendicia's study and they sat on the couch. They were silent only for a minute as LBJ, his face waxy on the color TV, stated his version of reality.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. Tonight I want to speak to you of peace in Vietnam and Southeast Asia.
If he wants a reduction in the level of violence, then get out. Bring all the boys home and let all those volunteers from South Vietnam fight the war.
So absorbed.
Patch brought her an orange mandarin spiced tea and held up a Coke. He's making it seem as if Vietnam just changed everything in the world. Help the nations of Southeast Asia?
With our hopes and the world's hopes for peace and the balance every day, I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
What? Shouted Patch as he rocketed out of the chair.
But
did you hear that, Natalie? Natalie was also on her feet as Johnson finished the speech.
That a strong
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Did he really say that? America asked Patch, glancing at the TV set.
Stands ready tonight.
You're damn right he said it. With Johnson gone, peace. Bobby will get the nomination,
and
Patch.
Stands ready tonight to defend an honored cause, whatever the price, whatever the burden, whatever the sacrifice that duty may require. Thank you for listening. Good night and God bless all of
He
you.
set down his Coke and held her in a dancing position, and they began waltzing around the room with Walter Cronkite in the background. "Why would he just give up the presidency?" she asked as he swung her around. "You heard him. The partisan divisions are interfering with him doing his job," said Patch as they danced onto the patio. "Well, I don't believe that. Presidents have partisan bickering forever. No, there's something more." "What do you mean?" asked Patch, pulling her closer as he two-stepped his way across the tiles. "Powers to be, the ones that removed President Kennedy. They wouldn't want Bobby as president." "Asked Nixon?" asked Natalie as she stopped. "Precisely." She twisted her mouth and made a crunched-up face. "There's no evidence of that, Patch. Nixon's the one." Los Angeles International Airport, Los Angeles, California, April 3rd, 1968. Vietnam combat deaths, April 1968, 520. They both carried overnight bags through the airport, but Patch signaled for Natalie to stop in front of the airport monitor. The news report was about to replay a speech by Dr. King. Neither one of them said anything as people passed by the monitor, but Patch and Natalie just listened to King's words. "Incredible speaker," said Natalie, "but I have to wonder who's listening. Those who want to hear what he's saying." Patch, she looked around. At least there are no incidents at LAX. She half smiled, and the next week, before returning to California, they would follow the RFK campaign as it looked for traction in the polls. Patch, like the voluminous crowds filled with enthusiasm, was convinced Bobby would be the next president of the United States.
So just as I say, we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
"Been to the mountaintop?" she asked. "Like any man he would like to live?" asked Patch. "Those are scary words, Natalie." They both turned to each other and just stared for several seconds. He took her by the hand without a sound as they started up the ramp. Patch had a deep-seated feeling in his gut from the frightening words Dr. King had just uttered in a Memphis speech last night. Patch shook his head as the rain pinged his cap. Having been in the city for a couple of hours, Patch and Natalie trekked on foot to the Kennedy rally scheduled in downtown Indianapolis. Just before 9 o'clock, Patch waited with Natalie through the mostly black crowd up Broadway. "What do you see, Natalie?" asked Patch as he checked the faces. "Just average folks. No intel, boys." Patch nodded. "We'll let Finney know what we saw once Bobby's done speaking." Someone from the campaign was saying that the mayor of Indianapolis, Lugar, was ranting about not being able to guarantee Bobby's safety. "Bobby's flying in from Ball State at Muncie. They warned him if he's in a black area there could be trouble. But he said he's coming over here anyways, without the police." Patch's face tightened. He worried that he doesn't have more security. Problem is, they could use a patsy. They lingered at 17th and Broadway as a spotlight traced the weighted night clouds. "We have to check the crowd, Natalie, while he's speaking." By now, the windswept black portion of Indianapolis had several thousand people gathered in two groups in the small park by 17th and Broadway. Patch surveilled the crowd again, fearing for Bobby's safety. Denali had him and Natalie at these rallies to find intel people, but Patch was uneasy about the general safety issues. Patch looked into the shadows past the two stoplight poles. There's radicals here. I've seen them before at other rallies. The College Room, the Wototo Wasimba, the Black Panthers, the Black Radical Action Project. We need to get close to the podium, said Natalie. There is no podium. I don't understand what's going on out here. Something isn't right. Patch checked his watch and he saw the campaign cars approaching in the dark. 9 p.m. He immediately saw Bobby moving through the crowd toward a flatbed truck. His aides lifted him onto the truck bed. Bobby had his back to the impromptu silver microphone set up at the edge. He turned to the crowd, his sharp profile and mass of auburn hair. What's he talking about? I don't know, answered Patch. The crowd chatter increased. For a few seconds he stalled.
Do they know about Martin Luther King?
We have conducted up the only list that can be handled.
Could you lower those signs, please? I have some very sad news for all of you, and that is that Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight in Memphis.
Bobby kept his composure, but his words were impacted with an intense personal emotion.
Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice between fellow human beings. He died in the cause of that effort. In this difficult day, in this difficult time for the United States, it's perhaps well to ask what kind of a nation we are and what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are black, considering the evidence evidently is that there were white people who were responsible, you can be filled with bitterness and with hatred and a desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in greater polarization, black people amongst blacks and white amongst whites, filled with hatred toward one another. Or we can make an effort, as Martin Luther King did, to understand and to comprehend and replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land with an effort to understand compassion and love. For those of you who are black and are tempted to be filled with hatred and mistrust of the injustice of such an act against all white people, I would only say that I can also feel in my own heart the same kind of feeling. I had a member of my family killed, but he was killed by a white man. But we have to make an effort in the United States. We have to make an effort to understand, to get beyond or go beyond these rather difficult times. My favorite poem, my favorite poet was Aeschylus. He once wrote,
Natalie held Patch's hands at the mention of Aeschylus.
even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another, feeling of justice toward those who still suffer within our country, whether they be white or whether they be black. We can do well in this country. we will have difficult times. We've had difficult times in the past, but we will have difficult times in the future. It is not the end of violence. It is not the end of lawlessness, and it's not the end of disorder. But the vast majority of white people and the vast majority of black people in this country want to live together, want to improve the quality of our life, and want justice for all human beings that abide in our land. And what dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago, to tame the savageness of man and make gentle the life of this world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and say a prayer for our country and for our people. Thank you very much.
The crowd rushed forward, actually cheering Bobby around Patch and Natalie. Patch wiped the tears from her eyes. Somebody cried out about Bobby being the last best hope. He's calling for peace when the powers to be want war. There's no government people here, Patch, just the citizens of Indianapolis. Patch spoke in a low, slow-paced voice. All hell is going to break loose around the country. Not here, Patch, she said as he watched the crowd peaceably disperse. Incredible. Lakeside Motel North, 1634 Square Boulevard, Cleveland, Ohio, April 5th, 1968, 2:35 a.m.
Lorraine, motel in Memphis.
Said Finney on a secure line. Patch had the Cleveland motel room's phone on speaker after they arrived early the next morning.
According to the preliminary information Denali's got from the FBI,
Well, I don't trust the FBI, Patch flatly stated.
we concur with that back here. I'm just giving you what they're putting out. Right now, the assassin is James Earl Ray. Ray broke jail April of last year by hiding in a bread truck. Once outside, he bounced like a pinball through the U.S., Canada, St. Louis, Chicago, Toronto, Montreal, and Birmingham. How he bought a 1966 Mustang in Birmingham, we don't know. He's got an Alabama driver's license. Off he goes to Mexico, Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta, 6 months ago. Alias in Mexico, Eric Starbo Galt. Left Mexico last November. So he goes to work in LA, worked for George Wallace at the campaign headquarters in North Hollywood. This is where it gets a little crazy. A little over a couple months ago, this guy had plastic surgery on his face. Drives from LA under the name of Raymond George Sneed to Atlanta. That was on the 18th of March. So on the 24th, he checks into a rooming house. Later, FBI agents found the map when they searched the room. The map had circles around the church and residence of Dr. King. Our intel says Ray drove alone to Memphis on April 2nd. The FBI told Denali's contacts that on April 4th, he stood in the bathtub steadying his rifle on the windowsill as he murdered King, who was standing on the second floor balcony at the Lorraine. Eyewitnesses, you know how reliable they can be, saw him running from the rooming house he had been renting across the street from the motel. Police claim they found a package.
Right, said Patch. People always drop incriminating evidence when they want to commit a crime, like Oswald and the Eisenhower jacket before the Tippit shooting, even if it's planted.
So there's a rifle and binoculars for what it's worth with Ray's fingerprints on it.
I don't believe we're getting the truth, said Patch.
Nor do I. Denali will get answers. We want you in D.C. for a meeting after Senator Kennedy speaks in Cleveland.
Who do you think did this, Finney? After a pause, the commander spoke.
All I can say is Hoover hates Martin Luther